So now we've got our key light back in place. It turns out there's something funky going on, and all I needed to do was restart Maya, and everything worked out fine. It was my favorite solution in the world, just restarting everything, and everything works out okay. So, so we've got the key light here, and now I'm going to work with you guys a little bit on setting up the secondary lights. Now, the first light that I want to talk to you guys about is the fill light. Now, the fill light's purpose is to be a complementary light to the key light. It's going to be complementary in its position because it's going to fill in the values on the opposite side of the key light. It's just meant to lift some of the kind of harsh shadows that are created, and depending on the individual scene that we're working with, the key to fill ratio in terms of intensity is going to vary a little bit, or quite a bit actually. So okay, so we've got the fill light kind of positioned on the opposite side of the key here. The way that I like to work is I like to turn off everything but the one light that I'm working with, especially initially, just to kind of get each of them to function on its own. So we'll save this image, and we'll just kind of work with the face area in here to limit our render times as we're going through this. So one thing too is that we are going to, or one thing I should point out is, yeah, like I said, I'm going to be using spotlights to go through this demo with you guys, just because it'll help us get an idea of so we can look through it and give you guys an idea of the positioning. Okay, so for this one, it's pretty good. It's just kind of flattening them out a little bit. It's too frontal, so we're going to go ahead and shift. We're going to shift that over to the left a little bit to get a little bit more shaping out of it. And right now we haven't adjusted color and intensity yet, so I usually like to get a rough idea of the shaping first, and then we'll kind of dial that in a little bit as well. But again, we're going to be using spotlights because, for demonstration purposes. Oh, one thing you should know about Simon, though, is that he was created using mental rays subsurface scattering shader, and it turns out that the ambient light in Maya doesn't always work really nicely with that shader. Sometimes it just renders black, and I was noticing that with Simon. So just something to be aware of. It's not a deal breaker or anything, but if anyone finds a good, if anyone discovers a workaround to that, let us know. But mine was just to work primarily with the spotlights here on them, and go from there. So okay, so that's fine. Like, this is a good fill position for now. It might be flattening them out a little bit, but I think it'll be okay, because what we're going to do at this point is we're going to tone it down and give it some color, and basically, everyone wants to know, whenever I'm doing these type of lectures, is how, where to start with the intensity values. And a rule of thumb that I learned was that a good place to start is about a third the value of any of these secondary lights, of any of the lights that we're going to be working with. I generally start with them to be about a third the value of the key light, and then just go from there. Okay, so I feel like we've got the light working, we've got the light roughly positioned the way we want. So what I like to do now is go ahead and turn the key light back on and see how the two are functioning together, because ultimately that's kind of the workflow that we do. It's you work with one in isolation until you get it to the point where you think it's in a good spot, and then you bring the other ones back, or a few of the essential lights back, to just to make sure that they're behaving together nicely. And that looks to be the case here. The one thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna adjust the key light just a little bit. It's a little low for the type of lighting that we're going for, so I'm just gonna kind of raise it up just a little bit, just so we can get a better I think that'll work. So let's just go ahead and pivot it up just a little bit. See what that gets us. This will help us get a better read on a sunny day, kind of a thing. But yeah, so I'm not going to tweak these lights too much for the purposes of this demo, because I just want to give you guys an example of, you know, the position of all the lights and the purposes of all the lights, and also a little bit about how a little bit of workflow. So that might be, it's kind of flattening it out a little bit. That might be a little too, might have gone too frontal with that, so let's pull that back just a little bit, and then hopefully this will be the last key light tweak. But again, the fill light and the key light are two lights that work in tandem. So you know, and this is definitely something to look at reference for. Like I said, normally if I'm doing a daytime lighting, I like to have some imagery up right next to me, just so I can compare. And one of the big things to compare is the key to fill ratio, and just understand that. Okay, so that's that's working a little. That's working okay, like that. Okay, so now we will move on to the bounce light. So let's turn off the key. We will turn off the fill, and we will create a new light. Call it bounce, just BNC. And for the bounce light, it's a light that simulates the light that comes up off the ground. Like in terms of a sunny day, it's a light that comes up off the ground after the sun hits it. So sun rays come down, hit the ground surface. Those surface reflect and reflect back up underneath you, and that's what allows, you know, your underneath your chin, underneath on your neck, underneath your nose to be illuminated whenever you're outside. So I tend to favor the bounce light a little bit of, you know, it's theoretically directly underneath, but I tend to favor it just a little bit frontward and away from the key light. In terms of color, you know, the bounce light's going to be whatever, you know, color the surfaces that they're standing on. You know, if they're standing on grass, it'll be a green. If they're standing in water, it'll be kind of a bluish pool. Let's just say they're standing on like dirt, like brown earth tone kind of thing. So we'll bounce that brown light back up underneath them, and start with that about 1/3 of the value, and we'll just see how that's working for us. So again, it's just kind of a soft, and with any of these secondary, or with most of these secondary lights, you don't want, if there is any shadow casting that needs to be done, we don't want it to be visible. We don't want it to be apparent. So again, you know, you're kind of seeing it's bouncing up underneath him here, getting up underneath his eyebrows. If he had a nose, it would be up underneath his nose. That value seems a little bright for me, so we'll go ahead and tone that down just a bit. Run this one more time, and then we will bring in the other lights as well. But you know, that being said, with the way that we're doing this workflow, you know, I will constantly throughout the lighting process continue to go back and you know, because right now I'm going to turn on these other lights and see how they're doing. But you know, it's kind of a constant process. It's like of turning lights on, turning them off, isolating, and it's really easy, especially when you're first lighting, to want to just turn all the lights on all the time and work with them, because it's the closest to what your final product is going to look like. But you need to know that you know, you need to work with them in isolation. So you can see here we're getting some nice little warmth up underneath them. It's never a light that you don't want it to be apparent that it's there, but you just want to be able to feel it a little bit. You know, let's go back and see if we can find. without it and with it. So okay, so that's the bounce light. From here, we're going to go ahead. So we're going to go ahead and turn these lights back off, and we're going to add our skylight. The skylight is the the way that the fill light is the complement to the fill light is a complement to the key. The skylight is the complement to the bounce. It is a light that lives overhead, over top of the character. And much in the same way the bounce, I like to favor it just slightly away from the key light towards the fill side. It's an outdoor scene, so our skylight's going to be the color, of a bright blue sky, because it's going to be that hemisphere dome that exists up above the character. And we're going to, same deal with the intensity as a starting point. And let's check it out. So again, the thing that we're looking for is pretty much the reverse of what we were seeing from the bounce, just like some top-down shaping to kind of fill in some of those top areas up above them. So the kind of shoulders here. It's a little bit frontal. We'll go ahead and dial that up just a little bit, and now we'll go ahead and pull back in the other lights and see how everything's going here. Get these guys back on. We'll check it out. And so now you're kind of seeing the way, so basically we've got the key light, in this scene we're using each of these 4 lights to cover the 4 quadrants. So we've got the key light filling the right side of them, the bounce, the fill light, on the left side, the bounce light coming underneath, and the skylight coming top down. We didn't say the bounce light, but that's, you can start to see some contribution from the skylight in here. It's a little bright, I think. So go ahead and tone that guy down just a tad. We'll start to see. So again, we're kind of surrounding him with light and filling and getting light to all the areas that you would on a normal basis. But after this, but after the skylight, once we hit the 5th light, which is our rim light, we are dealing with something that isn't as practical and more a light that just is functional in terms of pure aesthetics. So there we go. We'll say this is good for right now, so we tone that down just a little bit. We gotta be you always have to be careful with a cool light like this on this warm character, because it'll kind of gray him out and make him look a little bit, less fleshy and more kind of sickly. So just something to be careful of with that. Okay, so the last light we're going to add here is the rim light. Turn these guys off. Okay. Now the rim light's purpose is to function as a separating element that allows the character to be distinguishable from the background. It gives a bit of an outline to the character as well. Again, this is going to be on the opposite of the key side, going to be behind him, and let's see. And it's just meant to give the definition to the shape and help bring that out. Very rarely do you ever, this doesn't really show up too much in nature, unless, if the key light's behind you, then you'll see it a little bit. But again, this is just it's an artistic thing. It's not necessarily, like if you pay attention to all CG movies, you'll constantly see situations where there's a rim light kind of being, I don't use the term forced in, but it's being added to the scene. But if you really think about where that light is coming from, it doesn't really have a functional placeholder. But as soon as it's not there, you really do miss it. So yeah. So for this rim light, we'll keep it a little bit neutral in tone. We'll tone it down. And we will bring in the other lights. Again, the thing that we're looking for in the rim light is just a nice kind of soft outline around the character. So there's a little bit of fall off in here, but we're still kind of getting this nice edge. Let's go ahead. So now we've got all the lights turned back on. We'll see how this goes. And it's also good to isolate these lights individually because the more isolated they are, the faster things will render. So let's go ahead and take this out so we can compare. So that's just with the added rim light in there. Just gives that little bit of separation. It's tough to tell over the black, but it just gives that little bit of separation. So we'll go ahead and let's go ahead and just, for one last time before we finish this section, we'll just run the whole thing and see how it's all working here. But again, this isn't, this is not as fast as I would light something normally. This is just for demonstration purposes of getting everything in. You'd like to dial, I'd like the opportunity to obviously dial in a lot of this stuff. So it's a lot more. So it's working a little bit better, but you get the idea, the principles of it. So if you have any questions, let me know, and from here we'll be moving on to some specific eye lighting, and then we'll go from there.